Welcome to the Twice Over Movies podcast. If you're new here, check out our website at thetwiceover.com to get a better understanding of how we do our movie reviews. Our goal is to provide insight on elements of a movie which you consider more or less important, so that our scores are never misleading. Remember to follow us at the Twice Over on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and support us on Patreon.
Is that our friends again?
Looks like it. Dogfight.
Who's winning?
Us, I think. 2-on-1.
We got him.
Welcome everyone to the Twice Over Movies podcast. This is Faraz, your host.
And I'm Fahad.
All right, today we're discussing Sam Mendes' 1917 World War I epic. Fahad, this is our second war movie that we're doing for this podcast.
Yeah, the first being The Thin Red Line by Terrence Malick. A completely other kind of movie, right?
Completely, no, not completely. It's still a war movie, but it's a different approach to a war movie.
Yeah, for sure.
But I will say, I think themes kind of overlap a little.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so let's get started with our scores. The way the movie is structured, we're going to talk about the direction, plot, and writing kind of in cohesion with one another. So but the scores are still going to be independent. I'll start with the writing score. I gave this writing score a 70. Fahad, what did you give it?
I gave it a score of 85.
Okay, so you liked it a little more than me.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to the direction and plot then. Here, I gave it a 90.
I gave it a 90 as well. We're in sync.
We agree on the direction and plot, but writing, I see that we have quite a difference. Give me your logic in terms of your scores.
So I saw that the movie wanted to tell a simple story, a message being carried across enemy grounds to prevent lives from being lost. And so I couldn't really fault it from taking a narrow focus. The writing, as it pertains to the dialogue, never felt fake, never felt forced. It was above average. So I had to give it a score in the 80s, so I decided on a score of 85.
Okay. I just took writing again, I defined it more or less as the dialogue. Again, this is not a movie with a heavy dialogue at all. And I just didn't think that there was any single line or moment where the writing took me back and was like, oh, that's going to stick with me after the movie ends. However, for the direction and plot, I mean, there's so many parts of, I would say it's more about the direction than the plot. You said it's a pretty simple story that they're trying to convey, but the direction and the pacing and the presentation and just the engagement that they get with the audience is masterful. It's really well done. So the 90, I think, is justifiable for you. I'm not sure why you would put writing to be so close to it, but it's not bad.
I see those two categories as very related, so I wanted to rank it a little bit lower, but yeah, that's about it.
It is related, I guess.
So I gave it a score of 90 for direction and plot because I found the pacing to be amazing right from the get-go. As the commander's giving them their mission, you felt the sense of urgency right away. Not many movies are able to accomplish what this one did, with the movie getting going in the first few minutes, right? And from there, it just builds and builds and builds to its climax. I found the direction was amazing. Pacing was amazing. And the one taker, it kept us in the perspective of the two men, and it allowed the story to keep its narrow focus. And I thought it worked excellent.
I agree with everything you said. It captures you right away. The story does. Again, it's a story that's so simple. It's pretty imperative that they get the audience's attention up front so that they don't lose them right away. And they do that pretty well. And it's not so much like edge of your seat kind of story that you're gonna, be following along, but it's definitely intriguing, and you are gonna continue watching to see what happens next, even though there's not anything. I mean, it's a war movie, right? I guess what you're watching for, like, okay, who's gonna die, how or
Mhm.
why or where, and things like that. That's what you're thinking, and
Mhm.
you're only mainly watching, are they gonna succeed in this mission that they've been given to complete? I mean, I guess we'll say the mission is pretty simple. All they have to do is deliver a note to a um
Commanding
a
officer.
different regiment, a different
Sure.
yeah, different regiment that's about to carry out an attack, and they just need to get to them before they carry out that attack because they're walking into a trap by the Germans. Okay, so that takes care of our writing and our direction and plot. Let's move on to our acting.
Okay. I gave it a score of 90. Um, Excellent performances by the two lead actors. The supporting cast was great. Nothing to fault. Everything felt good. What'd you give it a score of?
For me, I gave the acting an 80. I do agree with you that it was good, and there was is believable.
Yeah,
Again, there's not
maybe I shouldn't have given it such a high score. I kind of just rushed it.
for me, like, see, 90 is like it's moving it into a territory where it's
Mm.
like uh, a performance that's gonna be remembered with like an Oscar or something, or it's gonna be nominated at the minimum.
Mm.
And
Okay.
I don't think it reached that level, but it was still above average,
Okay,
hence the
let me
80.
revise my score for that. I'm gonna also give it a score of 80.
Okay. All right. Just a note. So you've adjusted your score down from acting 90 to 80, which matches my score for 80. Our writing is still a little different. I had 70, you had 85. We
Hmm.
agreed on plot and direction
Hmm.
at 90 apiece. Let's go on to the next one, photography and cinematography. What did you
Hmm.
give this?
I gave it a score of 100. It was absolutely perfect. Yeah. Do you want to say anything?
And I agree with you. I gave it 100 as well. This is clearly a movie that just looks good, and it's gonna like it's almost like half the thing that's keeping you engaged other than the direction itself, which is like the
Hmm.
pacing of it and I guess the shots that they have, like, or
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
single shot, structured single shot that they have throughout the movie. But the cinematography is just so beautiful and so well done that it's never jarring, it's consistent. It just feels like so smooth throughout, and
Hmm.
because you're going through a single day, right? Like the movie starts with uh Blake and Schofield,
Sheffield.
Blake and Sheffield waking up and basically getting an order to complete this, to deliver a message, and
I
it goes from
later learned that it's just over 8 hours. 8 hours elapse.
oh, so it's not in the morning that they get that message then.
I think it's in the late afternoon.
Yeah, so it would be late afternoon because then it's the following after dawn, after sunrise that
Hmm.
um well, maybe we shouldn't be giving all that away, but even then, wouldn't it be a close to like 12 hours?
I guess so. Maybe they were supposed to get there quicker, so
Oh,
the mission
maybe
was
he
for eight
had 8
hours.
hours to get there, but
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So he was supposed to get there like midnight, like early hours of dawn to stop the attack, but he got a couple hours late, right?
you know what the cinematography, well, I
Uh-huh.
shouldn't say cinematography, but I should say the pacing felt like to me.
When?
So you know when you play Grand Theft Auto or like Red Dead Redemption, like these Rockstar
Uh-huh.
open world games? So
Yeah.
you go through a whole day, but like each hour in the day in the game is like a
Oh, it felt
minute in real
faster.
life. So it's
Yeah.
like 24 minutes you go through a whole day. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously this isn't that quick, but it's the same
Well,
thing. Like you're
well,
going through a
yeah.
whole
Well, yeah, because it's like one take and you're not supposed to break away from the character, so
yeah,
it
but like
is gonna
they
feel
make it
uh-huh.
believable. Like it's the pacing, like that's like the testament of how good the pacing is. Like clearly 8 to 12 hours whatever passed,
Uh-huh.
but it really doesn't feel like you missed a single beat.
Yeah. I think the biggest time that elapsed, I don't think we can cover right now, but it's in, the scene where the transition from day to night.
Yeah.
You remember that, right? I
Yep,
think
yep.
that's the biggest chunk of time missing. Otherwise, we're with the characters the whole time as time's passing like normally. Yeah,
That's
and it
true.
still felt smooth. It was great.
So we
Great.
agree that the cinematography is perfect. Like this is world-class stuff right here.
Oh yeah. I especially wanted to note some scenes that I loved. Those were the scenes at nighttime actually. Um, right
Yeah,
after the
and I mean, we can
transition.
talk about it
Yeah.
because I would say all the trailers or the commercials I've seen for it are showcasing that one particular scene where you got like fire raging, and then you got like the blue dawn sky,
Yeah.
and he's just obviously in the commercials or trailers just running and it's action and like the like fast paced stuff.
So I guess it's not a spoiler.
It's not a
Um,
spoiler, at least not the shots themselves, but there was the transition to move into that take,
mhm.
and that was like the single best like 5 seconds of the
Transition, yeah,
movie. Yeah,
agreed. How the camera moves from interior space to exterior, and it's showing
yeah.
at nighttime, and the flares are just going in the sky, and it's lighting up the ruins. That
Yeah,
was like
that was something special. I
otherworldly,
feel like that's
haunting
like
stuff.
something where like Sam Mendes as a director probably like it's like a career defining like moment for him where he's like, I want it to look like this.
hmm
And obviously credit to the cinematographer to actually accomplish it.
And they worked pretty closely, from what I've read, um, to get the movie
I'm
made.
sure because the colors, the way I mean I would say mainly just the colors. It felt a lot like the two Bond movies that Sam Mendes has also done. So Spectre and Skyfall. Like it
Who's
has
the
like that same.
cinematographer there? Was it
It
he?
is the same cinematographer for both of them.
No, I don't think so.
Let's find out because it does like have the same. Like I thought like Skyfall is like one of the best movies in
For that
terms of
lighting,
yeah, it's just light
nighttime
and
lighting.
colors.
Uh-huh.
Roger Deakins did do Skyfall.
Oh, he did. The
So let
two
me
have
see
worked together.
Spectre. Spectre was not nearly as good, but obviously still good. And cinematography here was different. It was Hoyt van Hoytema. So let me get back to my point. I think it makes sense that Sam Mendes and was it Roger Deakins?
Yeah.
Both of them worked together for Skyfall and for 1917 because it definitely has
A lot of the
similar
same scenes and lighting effects. Yeah.
yeah, lighting effects, colors, shadows, the way they work it, the way it just is presented is very similar, and that's a good thing because again, it's amazing.
hmm
All right, last category, Fahad. Let's talk about themes and motifs. I
Okay.
gave this a 75. I didn't think that there was anything significantly different that you see from other war movies. You obviously have just the general themes
hmm
of like gruesome, loss of life, innocence, authority and lack of control, things like that.
hmm
So I thought it was well presented. It wasn't in your face, and it was definitely there, and it should be there. But I didn't think it was anything too great, so I'll give it a 75. I thought it was just a cut above average.
Okay. I also gave it a score of 75. My rationale is a little bit different. So this movie, it isn't supposed to take place in the viewer's head. It's all about the visceral, right? You're supposed to experience the sound, the sights, right? It's you're not supposed to think about it any further than that. And so I can't really fault it, but at the same time, the movie's not presenting anything really complex. So really, the score of 75 should be lower, but I still just gave it an average score. Um, we don't really see anything in the way of motifs and themes until the very end, when it's Benedict Cumberbatch talking about the delay in the mission. Right.
Hmm.
This gets into the spoilers. So, Faraz, do you want to do a spoiler alert?
Yeah, before we get to the spoiler alert, we're pretty close in terms of how much we like this movie, but
hmm
clearly we thought the direction and plot and the cinematography are the strong suits of the movie. And if you're going in with that expectation that this is what you're going to get, you're going to really enjoy the movie. But if you're going in specifically for the themes and motifs that you get from a war movie or the acting in particular, you might just leave a little underwhelmed. And it's not so much that the story when we gave the direction and plot a 90, we're not giving so much the story a 90, we're giving more the direction a 90. Um, it's just the way this movie works out. In any case, that's the spoiler alert. Everything we talk about now will contain everything from the movie. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it first and then come back. All right, Fahad, let's get into the spoilers.
So, I was saying with the motifs and themes, we really didn't get much until Benedict Cumberbatch's last line about so the last lines I don't exactly remember verbatim, but it was about the inevitability of conflict, of the lives being saved today, being lost tomorrow, that until there's just one man standing. So I thought the crux of the motifs and themes just came at the very end, and it was good. But it did make the movie feel a little bit anticlimactic. What do you think?
Okay, yeah, Fahad, I agree with you that that was probably the it's kind of like fitting how Benedict Cumberbatch is probably a bigger name, but he
Hmm.
has like a 2-minute scene. But his scene is like the only one that kind of brings up the basically the realities of war. Like you said, what's saved today is lost tomorrow. And we have like a moment earlier in the movie where, as Schofield is on his way to the city, and he comes across another battalion, another group of soldiers, and one of the I don't know if it was a sergeant or the lieutenant in that battalion. He tells him like, make sure you have witnesses when you tell
Because some men just want war, right?
Colonel Mackenzie. Yeah, because he's like Colonel Mackenzie is like he's one of those kind of guys that's just in it for the fight itself.
Hmm.
And so we kind of had a foreshadowing experience of what kind of person Colonel Mackenzie is.
Hmm.
But yeah, as far as themes and motifs go, it didn't go much beyond that. I mean, we had again, they have. I mean, I don't want to say like in a bad way, but a token scene with like a
Oh, with the French
uh
lady.
with like an innocent civilian with a baby, and again, it's just showcasing who are the real victims of war here and
Hmm.
how innocent people are affected. And you could even say how these foot soldiers are the victims of war, especially in World War I, like just
Yeah.
the type of warfare that they were fighting with the trench warfare.
Hmm.
Like we're talking about straight up putting people out to die, hoping that like a few of them can make it across. It's almost like a hopeless strategy, but that's the one that they go with because I guess that was just the way it was happening. But like this was like the first world war,
Hmm.
or I should just say first global war that
Pulled in a
had this
lot of.
transition
Yeah.
from like the old to the new, because this is just like
Oh yeah,
towards the
you're right.
beginning of industrial revolution. It's only like 20-30 years old right now.
Yeah, and they
So like they
just
have all this
got
new
planes and
technology.
tanks and whatever else, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they have all this new stuff and they don't really know how like wars will be fought. So it's like a mix of having the new technology and a mix of like the old of just like fighting on a field, like face to face.
Hmm.
But then because of the machines, you kind of have to do like if you create trenches or else like it'll just be mayhem. And I guess I could argue that trench warfare was mayhem itself anyway.
Yeah. Did you like the narrow focus of the movie? Because I did. It felt like a roller coaster from start to finish. We were with the same characters the entire time, and I liked how we didn't get the perspective of any really commanding officer until the end. Um, I liked the narrow focus of the movie. It told a simple story. It did it well. Yeah.
I like the narrow focus as well. I like that we were just with a couple corporal soldiers. Um, I like that it stayed with them because, again, when you have such a simple story, and it's going to obviously include or involve fewer characters.
Hmm.
So when you have fewer characters, you want to spend time in building a repertoire with that
Hmm.
character so that the audience has a connection to that character so that they stay interested and engaged. So I thought they did that pretty well. And it helped that, we're with two good guys for whatever that means, right? Like in war, like they're just the good guys. They try
Right.
to help that German pilot when he crashes
Yeah,
down.
when they did need to, right?
Yeah, when they didn't need to at all. We have Schofield who helps out that French lady and the baby that she's with.
Hmm.
Um, so I like that we had this narrow focus because at the end of the day, like what is like a war story or war? It's just a collection of individual
Hmm.
like traumas, right?
Right.
So
So yeah,
I like that
I mean
we
it.
got that perspective from an individual.
Yeah, so the alternative would have been expand the focus, tell multiple stories at once, but then I think it would have been way too chaotic to tell multiple stories in one movie. And I kind of like the simpleness of the story because it was very um, anti-Hollywood, like in the sense that nothing you get the sense that this is only one story of the millions of stories that could be told about this war, because I'm sure there were thousands of other messengers with similar circumstances and stories that didn't really amount to changing the tide of the war, right? Because at the end of the movie, what do we get? We get the sense that even though the attack was delayed, it's just going to happen tomorrow. So it doesn't change much in the end. So the movie almost becomes about the two people rather than anything in the background.
Totally agree with you there. However, you did mention how like it's a roller coaster, the way that the perspective of this movie being from, one or two people.
Yeah.
I guess we should mention,
I liken it kind of to Gravity, the same effect that Gravity had, where we're sticking with Sandra Bullock throughout the movie.
yeah,
It
hmm
it feels the same to me.
yeah, it's the same concept, I guess, right? But my point was, so I saw a review for this movie from The Verge,
Uh-huh.
and it literally said, it's taking like war and like making like a theme park, and it just reminded me of like what you just said, calling
Oh
it a
yeah,
roller coaster.
yeah.
It's like, how do you feel about? I
Uh-huh.
guess, I guess the criticism was that like the structured single shot is taking away from the realities of war and like taking you on this roller coaster. However,
hmm
I personally did not agree with that headline and review
I think
because
it's a proper criticism. You can't fault the film for taking that approach. It just creates an interesting, different take on a war movie. Yeah.
yeah, because I want to mention one thing that I found interesting about this movie that I don't see often in war movies is the gruesomeness of death.
With bodies
And
just hanging around in the
yeah, and
background.
it's not that we see death occur often. We really don't. But we see the aftermath of it.
With the burned
And it's
buildings, the bodies.
the the bodies like in that river when he's trying to climb over them and get on
Oh,
shore.
that was absolutely gruesome, right?
That was so gruesome. And then not to mention this is one of the few movies that shows animals quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um
From dead
as how
dogs to
yeah,
what was
from
it,
dogs
carcasses.
to cows to just
hmm
animals, horses,
You think
and
you think that's kind of like alluding to destruction of nature, kind of how Terrence Malick does in his Thin Red Line?
it for sure is, but not just nature in general. But I think it's just showcasing. I mean, right now as we're recording this, we know about the wildfires in Australia, right? And people are talking about how like 500 million animals have been affected
hmm
or killed. So like, if you think about it, like we do forget that us humans cause insane destruction, not just to like, I mean, yeah, they're part of nature, but like animal lives too, right?
hmm
But yeah, it's a pretty gruesome movie. That's why I didn't agree with that headline that I saw from The Verge or their review. It doesn't, it
It is.
the
Yeah.
theme park slash roller coaster analogy. I mean, I kind of get it because of the structured one shot, but it's there for like a technical achievement type purpose, right? It's almost like a
Right.
challenge, I'm sure, for Sam Mendes to be like, all right, how can I convey this story, keep the audience engaged, and make it look beautiful, and make it look like it's one long take, And
hmm
I mean,
I
I
mean,
think it's a totally valid way of doing it by structuring it to look like a one shot.
yeah. Like the criticism that could be an amusement park of a movie, that only works if the movie sought to glorify war, to show like firework displays in the background, make it look pretty. No, it didn't do that. It showed I thought the realities of war, the gruesomeness, the bodies being mangled, blood everywhere, spent shell casings, ruins, all that stuff. It didn't seek to like
Yeah, the way I look at a war movie usually is if the movie is showing victory,
mhm,
I find it I just take it as like a propaganda piece or I just find it as a movie that's glorifying something that's not worth glorifying.
yeah,
And this movie does not have anything showing or even indicating that there's a hint of victory for anyone involved,
yeah.
which is the true reality of war, at least modern war.
Mhm.
So, um, I did have one other thing. I wanted to talk about what did you think of the music in the movie? I thought that made a huge difference when it came to, again, the structure of being a single long take.
Oh, what specifically did you notice with the music?
I I noticed how well the music was used to build up certain moments, and then how it was suddenly cut off to
I honestly don't remember the music. Can you remind me of the music when it was used? What scenes?
one. Okay, so just off the top of my head right now, when he's
Uh-huh.
on the river after he's left that city of
Oh, he jumps in the river, right?
Ikust.
Yeah.
Yeah, jumps in the river. After a bit, when things start coming down, you have like the flowers that are coming off the trees into the river, and you got like a soft, hopeful, calm music playing, and then how sudden it cuts off, and that's when we have the scene where he has to climb over all those dead bodies that are floating
Oh,
at the
yeah.
coast of the river. And
Okay.
then there was another moment, I'm trying to remember right now. I want to say it like this. So when it was trying to build up the tension
Mhm.
before something is going to happen, um, there would be music playing. Whatever,
And
depending on whatever the scene or the
does it
context was, would determine what kind of emotion the music
was it
was
Hans
getting out of the
Zimmer-esque with
audience.
Dunkirk where it like ratchets up every moment until it builds?
No, no, no. It wasn't like that.
Okay.
Dunkirk is like different in that, right?
Yeah.
Dunkirk is like consistently going in the background almost.
Mhm.
Whereas this definitely has like moments where it says total silence and cuts off. But those moments of silence are like the absence of the music only for you to realize how the magnitude of the situation.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, there's a lot of music during I mean, Schofield, he's running a lot in this movie. When he's running, there's a lot of music to get you, like, to get your heart rate going with him.
Okay.
I thought it was very well done. Like, again, so it's awesome that you didn't really notice it
Yeah,
because that
because
means it was done well.
yeah, I thought it blended in well. I didn't movie
Yeah, no, I agree that it did. I'm not saying that the music took anything out of the
Yeah.
movie. It definitely only added. So,
Yeah, I think movies in which you don't notice the music are the best because it's not supposed to take on an independent quality. It's just supposed to, um, kind of like
it's supposed to
complement everything else,
amplify like what
right?
the
Yeah, yeah,
movie already has, right?
yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about our favorite shot of the movie, Fahad. Let's talk about
The flares?
the day to night transition.
Ooh, yeah, yeah. All right, go ahead.
This is by far like these like okay, so Schofield is crossing a bridge because this is after he's left that other battalion that he came across, and he's crossing the bridge. He's getting shot at by a sniper. He realizes where the sniper is in the house. He's going up to the house. He shoots him, but he himself gets, I guess, grazed by the bullet. I'm not really sure.
Mhm.
And he is knocked unconscious. He wakes up with water dripping on his face. So that is, like you said, probably the longest moment where we're without
Without a sense of time,
time.
right?
So we don't know
Yeah,
like if,
hours
2 hours have
elapsed.
passed or like 6 hours even.
Right.
And when he wakes up, uh, we wake up with him, like with above him, and then the camera goes up to the stairs, goes into the room. You see the body that he shot, the sniper.
Uh-huh.
And then right there, when you see the body of the sniper, you see a flare going out in the back, and that lights up the entire room
Yeah,
with like the bars from the window coming in. And it's
the
just,
window is perfectly framed, and that you
yeah. And
see.
like the shadow of like
Mhm.
the bars from the window are going across the body, and then the camera pans out over the body outside the window, and then you just, again, same thing, like the flares are going everywhere. You have a broken down city with just parts of buildings up that cast shadows in the most random directions,
Mhm.
but it looks like a work of art straight up. And then it comes back down, the camera does, and then you're behind Schofield, who has at this point exited the house, and now he's looking into the city that he's gonna try to cross.
Yeah.
And that sequence is pretty intense. And this is where it's broken up. It's paused. That sequence is paused when he comes across the French lady and the baby, and it kind of gives us time to calm down, relax, and take in what we just saw, which was like beautiful filmmaking.
Mhm.
And then it continues
Yeah.
until he gets out of that city
Yeah,
or jumps
that
into the
whole
river.
scene where he's being chased, right? He perceives enemy fire, he's ducking, he's dropping to the ground, gets up, he starts running again. until he
Yeah.
finally encounters that man next to the building on fire, and he doesn't know whether he's an enemy or a foe. It's just like a little bit of a stalemate, and then he gets running again. That's it's
Yeah.
just like ups and downs, and it's amazing. And then we finally get that sense of relief, like you said, when he enters that building with the French woman. Um, the only thing I have to add to it, yeah, it's one of my favorite shots like ever. Just
Yeah,
because
easily.
it's so artistic, it's so like unique. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to get that into this episode because that's the one thing that's gonna stick with you and you're gonna remember. And I feel like going forward, people are gonna like refer to it as just one of those scenes that
And I think a lot of
like
directors are
defines
gonna,
cinema in this age.
yeah, I think a lot of directors are trying to will imitate this eventually, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. I have one other thing I wanted to talk about.
Hmm.
There was the conversation between Blake and Schofield. They talked a lot about earning like accolades and medals
Oh yeah,
for
the
their
conversation. Okay.
the conversations of it. Yeah, so Schofield is he seems like he doesn't seem to care too much about recognition, and Blake is telling him like well, what did you do to your medal? I forget what the medal was for, and he said he traded it for a
Bottle.
bottle of wine,
Yeah.
and Blake is like, wait, why would you do that? And it's just he's telling him Schofield is referring to the medal as just the physical object itself, like it's a piece of tin. And like I guess I wanted to talk about how like what did you think? Like
So
do you
yeah, in that scene where they're conversing, I obviously thought of Schofield as a more battle hardened, a little bit cynical person who's been through the war, and Blake to be, a little bit naive, all seeking out these medals, right, that are supposed to give some sort of value to him, like that value from accomplishment, right? Um, and even though Blake's not after the medal for this because he's got his brother's life on the line, the medal still means something to him.
yeah, so I just found it interesting how like I think that was a very good way of distinguishing between the two characters that were with Blake and Schofield. How both of them, I guess, perceive war differently
Hmm.
and like what it means to be a soldier even.
Hmm.
And like you said, it could just be because Schofield is more battle tested, so he's a little hardened. So whereas Blake, I guess, is a little more hopeful. Like they even mentioned, like he tells a lot of jokes. Um, I guess a little more lighthearted.
Yeah.
And I also didn't. I mean, they foreshadowed this early on, where um, I didn't. I guess I didn't pick it up well. Maybe I missed the line or something. But like Schofield, he is talking about going back home, and he kind of abruptly stops because he gets emotional, but the thought is never finished. So we, or at least I, didn't understand really what his situation was back home. And it kind of circles back at the end when he's sitting by the tree
Hmm.
and he is looking at pictures, and we can assume it's his wife and daughter.
Oh,
And
okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. All right.
like I guess, and like how like the back of the picture says like "come back to us" or something.
Yeah.
But like I couldn't like tie it in with what he was saying earlier because I
Because they
guess
all
maybe I
seem
just
so young, right? They seem to be in a similar position. I didn't think he had a family of his own either. I thought he was going back
yeah.
to, his family, his parents, his siblings.
What
Um,
did you think of like the relationship between Blake and Schofield?
I questioned it a little bit, right? Because in that scene where they're talking about the metals, the valueness of the value in metals, they seem like different people. Um, but
Yeah,
otherwise,
no, I agree.
otherwise, they had good chemistry as two characters, two actors. Their friendship looked, yeah, felt,
Yeah, they're like friends by circumstance, right?
yeah,
But nothing wrong with that. I mean, we both. I mean, we gave the acting an 80, and it's mainly because of these two guys because this is 95% of the screen time.
yeah.
it's either both of them or one of them. So
I was going to talk about how this movie fared against other war movies, but we've kind of discussed it already with Dunkirk and Thin Red Line. The only one we haven't mentioned that I wanted to talk about was Paths of Glory by Kubrick. It also takes place in World War One, and it takes place in the trenches. That movie is very different from this one. Paths of Glory tells multiple stories. It tells the story from the trench soldier. It tells the story from the commander's perspective, and it's way more cynical. It's all over the place. It's more heady rather than being visceral as this movie was. I don't think you've seen it, have you? Paths of Glory.
I have not seen it.
Okay,
No,
gotcha. Yeah, that's one worth watching.
I will take your word for it. But yeah, I was generally impressed with this movie. Again, I'm not the biggest war movie guy, but
Hmm.
gave it a shot. Heard a lot. I do like Sam Mendes. I think he's pretty great. So it definitely lived up to the hype, I would say. I get why there's so much Oscar buzz for it.
Hmm. Oh, one more thing. Did you feel that when Schofield accomplishes his mission by getting the general to call off the attack, did you feel that sense of fulfillment, almost like how a movie climaxes? Did you think that scene was almost anticlimactic because of the way the scene played out?
I think it was intentionally anticlimactic
Okay.
because, especially if you tie it in with also what Colonel Mackenzie says, that it just means we're going to do this next weekend.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't mean that we accomplish anything by not doing this today,
Hmm.
and it doesn't mean we stopped anything either. Like you said, like the in the grand scheme of things, nothing really changed by him
Right.
accomplishing his mission. So,
Yeah. So in that,
and I think he knows it too.
yeah, I think he got the
He's just
sense of
doing his
that,
job.
right? He got the sense of that throughout it because as he's talking to other soldiers about his mission, they all give him the sense of like, yeah, go for it. It's going to save some lives, but is it really going to mean
Hmm.
that much? The
Yeah,
only,
so there was that anticlimactic moment when it comes to him, quote unquote, accomplishing his mission.
yeah,
Um, if anything, we're more concerned as the audience about him finding Blake's brother so he can tell him what
oh,
happened,
more of his
right?
personal mission, right? To
Yeah, like
honor
again,
his
exactly. It's
friendship.
more of a personal mission, and I mean, I personally cared more about that
Same.
than I did about him actually stopping
Wait,
the attack.
I think the only gratitude expressed to Schofield was the thank you he gets from the second in command officer as he's exiting the den after his
Hmm.
talk with Benedict. He's like, the commanding officer's like, thank you, son. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's all he gets.
yep.
Benedict tells him, what does he tell him? F off?
He tells him to fuck
Yeah.
off. It's a good way to end, I think, the movie. I didn't think, like, again, like I said, there's no like showcasing of victory,
Hmm.
um, which is just like manufactured. Really, it's not even. I don't know. I just thought the way that the movie throughout was what it was. It was good. It was entertaining. Endings for like a movie like this can ruin a movie for me, but the way that they chose to end this movie, kind of subdued,
Yeah,
but real, and I appreciated that.
same here, 100%. Subdued, but 100% appreciated. Yeah, that's all I had. How about you?
Yep, that's all I got too. Thanks, Fahad. We will catch you guys next week.
Will do.
Thanks for listening to this production of The Twice Over. If you haven't already, subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcast, and remember to support us on Patreon or by sharing the podcast with a friend. Feel free to contact us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at The Twice Over, or email us at comments@thetwiceover.com. All of the music you heard is from Amerigo Gazaway. Check him out on Bandcamp and Spotify.
Sorry, man. Like the waffles are like causing me to cough and burp.